Hey guys, let's talk Beyond the Gates for May 26, 2026. So, in this episode, we pick back up with Vanessa and Nicole, and Nicole is asking her, are you sure that your son, isn't just going along with this to placate you? And she's like, no, him and Joey have been, getting closer. That is true. Two things can be true. And in this instance, it is because he's not fully okay with the relationship between his mom and Joey. However, he does not want, it's not so much that he's trying to placate her. He understands that his mom is grieving. And so he's trying to respect that too. So it is a balancing act with him. Um, but he's not as adamant as um Deanna about Joey being bad. But he does have questions. However, he allows Joey to kind of placate him because I just feel like none of Joey's answers are good enough. But I digress. Maybe it's because I'm not looking at it objectively, because I know that Joey, in fact, did have something to do with Doug's death. But while Nicole and Vanessa are talking about Doug, well, talking about Joey and her kids, Donnell is still at the casino and he's asking questions about the relationship that Joey had with his mom and about, the details surrounding his father's death. And, Joey does what Joey does and explains it all away. And he tries to push back a little, but overall he accepts what he says and goes along with it. Meanwhile, Deanna is at the country club hallucinating, and she's talking to her dad, and her dad's telling her that, yeah, the relationship started before you know i I died, and it's not all on your mother, and we have to protect your mom from Joey and all of this stuff he's saying. And so um he's saying, we know we have to protect her from Joey. And she is, feeling like renewed sense of, I have to get my mom away from him. And so when her brother comes to the country club, she's talking to him, but she doesn't want to say, I was talking to dad, because then that might make her look crazy and then they might want to try and commit her or something. So she's trying to, he's back to rationalizing Joey's behaviors away. And she's like, yo, this is sus. Like, Joey is not a good dude, but he's not in a place to hear it, and he's going to accept what Joey is telling him at face value. And I'm not saying that Donnell is wrong, because at some point you have to realize that people are adults and that you can't control what they do, and in realizing that you can't control what they do, you have to just let it play out and just be there for the person when it does. And that's where I feel like Deanna needs to go with this. But she's not going to leave it alone. She is very tenacious. And I think that's what kind of Kat was kind of getting to on Friday when she was talking to her. Like, yeah, and then people label you as crazy because you can see what everybody else can't see. but sometimes you just gotta let it play out and just be there for the person once it does. Meanwhile, Eva and Leslie are talking, and they're talking about, basically they need a replacement for, Derek. And, Eva had gotten close with Derek and working with the clinic. And so she's sad. And Leslie, at first, she's like, being smart about, oh, rest in peace or whatever. But then she sees how Eva is taking it, and she's like, okay, yeah, it's so sad that he's lost. I can't wait, Leslie. So she's like, I need you to, leave your dad and come work for me. And she was like, I'm not leaving, dad. And she was like, well, nobody knows the clinic like you do. And then she's like, okay, I will work for you while you're finding a replacement for Derek. So she was like, and I'll talk to dad and, get his permission to work both. And so she leaves to go do that. Meanwhile, Kat and Bill are Kat and Bill, because Bill acts more like a father than Ted. Kat and Ted are at Orphe Jeans, and they're catching up, and they're talking about the cotillion. They're talking about why he was giving Nicole eyes, and why she didn't bring Carlton or Kyle, and why he didn't bring Shanice. And Kat is on to him, but he's trying to act like there's nothing behind how he was looking at Nicole. But I was convinced that if Nicole hadn't left the cotillion when she did, I think she would have left with Ted. But I digress. I'm gonna mind my business. So Kat is talking to him, and then Eva comes over and Kat leaves. But they have a forced pleasant exchange because Eva says, because Kat is choosing her battles now. So Eva says, I heard that Samantha got Platinum Deb. Congratulations, y'all, your hard work paid off. And Kat was like, yeah, you did a good job with her hair, and left. I love it, Kat. Never change. Never change. Keep your foot on their necks. Anyway, so Eva comes and she talks to her dad about working for both of them. And at first he's like, what? What about, my practice or whatever? And she's like, I can do both, and I won't let anything slip through the cracks. And he's like, I know you won't. I trust you or whatever. Meanwhile, Haley and Randy are meeting, and Haley don't give that one rat's behind about Randy, and he just letting it slide. And I don't know if he really did do anything to Lynette, because Haley is exactly who he described her to be when he had that last conversation with Lynette, when they were at the hotel, and how she thinks she better than him, and all of that. She is exactly that, because she's just basically using her cousin to further her mission. So anyway, they talking, and she's like, oh, don't worry, I need you, because who else gonna give me the elixir that I need? Meanwhile, Bill is talking to Tomas, and he tells Tomas that you know, there's no evidence of, foul play surrounding, Lynette's disappearance. And then Tomas lets it slip that Kat was still investigating. So Bill shut it all the way down, which Tomas then goes to tell Kat. And she was like, oh, I didn't even get. And he was like, look, you put my job in the line. Everything that I worked so hard for, you got to let it go. I don't want no parts of it. And so I don't know what that means for Kat, but knowing Kat, like I said, Deanna's very tenacious, much like Kat. They're both very tenacious people, so I don't necessarily know if Kat's gonna leave it alone. But then Haley goes, and Bill isn't feeling well, and she doses him again because she thinks she's getting closer to her payday. See y'all tomorrow. Hey guys, let's talk Beyond the Gates for today, May 27th, 2026. So we start this episode with in the Richardson Smith household. It's the morning after cotillion, so Samantha is there, but she's on her way out the door because she has to go take pictures as the Platinum Deb. She has to go take pictures. And Martin and Smitty are like, no, we're gonna sit down and have breakfast. And she's like, I'm not hungry though. So she's not eating, but they all sit and they have breakfast together, and they're all pretty much making light of Tyrell, who they know skipped the end of the cotillion to go have sex with Jessica. And I don't care what they say. It is definitely giving double standard, because later on, Martin has a very in-depth conversation with Tyrell about sex. And I want to see him have that same conversation with Samantha, because I feel like when Samantha got caught, they're only a year apart, okay? Only a year apart. And when Samantha got caught with Nathan, they really went crazy. He even disrespected his sister, you know, and everything, how crazy he went. But now it's like boys will be boys with Tyrell, and I just don't like that. One thing about me is I hate a double standard. If it's good for one, it should be good for all. Like, don't do that double standard mess. But here we are. Um, and so, like I said, he ends up having an in-depth conversation with Tyrell about, because Tyrell felt like he didn't know what he was doing or whatever. But later on, Samantha runs um into Jessica, and they're talking, and she's like, I'm going to be able to handle the long distance better than he is. And then she's like, well, I don't want my brother getting hurt. Seems like y'all need to have a conversation. And she comes and she has the conversation with Tyrell, and she tells Tyrell that she thinks that they should go to college as friends. And then he's thinking that maybe it was because the sex, and she's like, no, I that was fine, and I want to do it again. But basically, she feels like you know it's too much pressure for them to go to school and be maintain their relationship, which it is. It's a lot of pressure. And how often do people last with their high school sweetheart? And it'll hurt now, but it'll hurt worse later. Sorry. But then we have Leslie, and she's trying to reach out to Malone because she says Joey blames her for what happened at the clinic. First of all, nothing barely happened at the clinic. Let's start there. Nothing barely happened at the clinic. Joey don't got nothing to do with the clinic. He knows who has something to do with it, but he ain't got nothing to do with it. And she's an idiot. And so Shanice and Ted are at the club as well, and they're having breakfast, and they're trying to talk through their issues. And basically Shanice is like, look, I don't want to miss out on the future or whatever. So they're happy, and Leslie comes up and he's putting his foot down now, which Chad putting his foot down is laughable to me. Like, I take him zero seriously. Like, I don't take him serious at all. Like, I'm sorry, Ted. Like, I may have even laughed. And so he puts his foot down with Leslie, and then Shanice is like, we have to go to this press conference. I would take you home and go a marathon with you. But he was like, I'm off this weekend or whatever. I was like, dang, girl, you easy, because that wouldn't have been enough for me. I'm sorry. Because, okay, Ted. Posturing. That's what that was. But anyway, so Um, Jan and Mona are at Orphe Jeans and they're talking about the death of Derek, and then it turns into a type 2 diabetes PSA. That's one of the things that I will say that I like about Beyond the Gates, because the medical component is never too far. Like, I wouldn't necessarily, like, General Hospital has hospital in the name, and I feel like sometimes they don't do enough with the medical component. But because there are several doctors on Beyond the Gates, I feel like they do a great job at including the medical component, because the way that they told the story about Gran and her cancer, the way that they did the PSA about the type 2 diabetes, I just think they execute it well and they get a message across that needs to be heard. All of these things are important, and I appreciate that, because they just incorporate it in their story so well. I appreciate Beyond the Gates for that. Meanwhile, Jacob is at the police station talking to Grayson, and Grayson's upset because while he ain't going to jail, he Ashley don't really want nothing to do with him. And then Chief Hawthorne comes and he's like, look, you got caught up, and I know what it's like to get caught up, but you trying to take steps to make it right. So that makes you admirable in my book. And y'all say Chief Hawthorne is hard. He was very gracious to Grayson. So then Grayson goes to Orphe Jeans, and Jan is talking to him, and then he also runs into Leslie, and Leslie tentatively how did I miss this part? Leslie tentatively um offers him a job at the clinic. Meanwhile, let me go back to Leslie. So they go to the hospital, and it's Jacob and Naomi, it's Shanice and Ted, Chief Hawthorne, and the press. Mitty is there, and so they're doing a presser on what happened. And Ted is speaking as the director of the hospital board, and the chief is speaking, and here comes Leslie trying to get her moment in the most disgusting way ever, because Derek has died and she's basically making a mockery of it. Talking about some my favorite employee. You didn't even like Derek. You didn't want to hire him. Eva hired him, and you are disgusting for that display. And she got up there carrying on and crying because she's trying to save face. And I don't even think it's about saving face, because nobody's even checking for the clinic in this, because the clinic played such a minor role. It was over before the clinic really even got started. Like, the the clinic wasn't a major part of this ring. It was the hospital and Leah. Like, it's so ridiculous how she came in there acting like a fool. And then she is all up on Ted, and it's just crazy. But anyway, so Naomi goes to see Ashley, and she shows her her trick for anxiety, which is building the paper planes. And then Derek's dad comes over, and then Ashley stood up there and let him blame Jacob for what happened to Derek, when you have more fault in what happened to Derek than Jacob did. Because Jacob didn't ask him to come here. It's the guy that you was messing with. Out, Ashley, girl. But yeah, and then Jacob's dad goes down to the police station, and Jacob, he said he wasn't just the, hero. He'll always be a hero to me. And I felt bad for Jacob. And then Naomi talks to her father-in-law because she's worried about Jacob's mental health. And I think she's right to be worried. But that was Beyond the Gates for today. I'll see you all tomorrow. Hey guys, let's talk Beyond the Gates for today, May 28th, 2026. So we start this episode at Uptown. We have Shanice, Vanessa, Ashley, Naomi, Jan, Jacob, Isaiah, and then Eva and Andre, and then, his firefighter buddies and other people, that knew Derek, because we know that they wanted to have some kind of like memorial for Derek. So they decided to do that at Uptown. So they're there and they're all, um, you know, first they're just mingling, waiting for it to start. And, Vanessa is talking to Jacob and she asked Jacob, what's going on with the investigation. And he was like, are you asking for your boyfriend? Or, and he kind of pops off at Vanessa. And then Jan and Ashley are talking, and she says, that Derek's dad isn't coming because he blames Jacob for what happened to Derek. But Derek didn't Derek didn't mind his own business. I'm just saying, like, I mean, he didn't have no business being there. Derek didn't wasn't invited by Jacob, and Jacob was trying to get him out safely. He told him to stay back or whatever. And Derek, wasn't gonna let his best friend, get killed. But, grief is a tricky thing. And so, even though his dad is holding Jacob accountable, it's out of grief. You lost your kid. It's a hard thing to deal with. Um, and so, Isaiah, Eva, Vanessa, Shanice, Ashley, they're all, giving, speeches about the kind of person that Derek was. And they are, commemorating him. And then they do the last call. And I can say that I did get a bit emotional when they did the last call. And because, like, dang, Derek really good. He really gone. And yeah, Jacob is really taking it hard. And everyone keeps talking about how he risked his life to save Jacob. And I think that Jacob is experiencing survivor's guilt because, if his best friend wouldn't have been trying to save him, he wouldn't have lost his life. But ultimately, that's the whole reason he even went to the warehouse, because he wanted to protect Ashley. And so, this is what Derek wanted to do. Derek, I believe either Ashley or Shanice said that, if Derek was here, he would tell you that he died doing exactly what he wanted to do, protecting the people that he loves. And he liked to protect people, being a firefighter and all. That's what his calling was. So, yeah. Meanwhile, Nicole and Ted are in her office, and he's congratulating her because Kat, Naomi, um, Deanna, and now Samantha have all become platinum Debs under her tutelage. And so, he's thanking, congratulating her. Then he starts talking to her about, Leah and what she, is put in the hospital through, and how he put her name in the ring for chief of staff. Girl, go on, be chief of staff. Because you know me, I like me a chief of staff. Ask Portia Renee Robinson. I love me a black woman chief of staff. But anyway, and then she's upset because she doesn't want to be chief of staff. That's not like, she don't like the bureaucracy of it all. And so she's talking to Ted, y'all. Why Ted said, I want to tap you. And I like to fell out the chair watching that when he said that. I was like, Ted. And then Nicole was like, you want to rephrase that? But anyway, so then Kyle comes and Ted leaves. And he was like, I'm going to come back and see if you change your mind. She's like, I'm not. But if I do, I'll call you. But yeah. What y'all think? Y'all think Nicole should be chief of staff? Meanwhile, we had a very interesting conversation that I think may have been much needed today between Bill and Danny. And I don't even think that the conversation was meant to go there, but sometimes things unfold and it does. So Danny sees Bill and, she is talking to him, thanking him for stepping up for Naomi, as they deal with the loss of Derek or whatever. And the conversation turns to Mike, and then she talks about how Mike used to look at her, and he's like, why didn't you ever tell me? And she's like, what were you gonna do? Because at the end of the day, as a husband, you're supposed to provide and protect. And when you are being unfaithful, that's I can't even get a dereliction of duty. That's you are not it. And I know people may say you can do both, but you can't, because once your wife knows that you're cheating on her, she doesn't feel protected any longer. So why would she tell you? And so, yeah, the conversation goes there, and he's trying to like take up for himself, but you taking up for yourself, you're part of the problem. And I don't think he really got that until Danny mentioned why Naomi didn't want to come work at his firm. Yeah, is all of those reasons that Naomi gave, they are true. However, this is also true. And she's like, I know my daughter. Like you can say what you want to say, but I know my child, because a mother does. And so, yeah, I like how introspective it made Bill, because then later we see Ted come to the club and they're sitting there talking, and they're talking about, and he's kind of melancholy, and they're talking about how their roles in the family have changed. And Ted is like, it was your fault. Well, do you realize it was your fault, Ted? But he's saying it was, we brought this on ourselves, and we basically got to deal with the new normal and try and be the best we can be in the new normal. But Ted is feeling miserably, if you ask me, because I still feel like Eva is the top priority. And he feels like, well, Kat and Martin, they had me all along, so now I have to focus solely. No, you have to split it. You have to, you can't just focus on Eva. I know you feel guilt, but you can't control what happened in the past. But you can't neglect your children that were here before, um in order to make up to Eva, because no matter what you do, it's still not going to change the fact that she grew up without a father. But anyway, then we have Chelsea and Madison. They're at Orphe Jeans, and Chelsea is talking to her about her mom and inviting her mom to the wedding. And Madison was like, maybe by the time the wedding comes, we will be in a much better place, in order to invite her to the wedding. And then she said, or maybe my mom will change. She's like, yeah, you're a bit delusional, but it's sweet. And then we have Danny. No. Then we have, yeah, Danny comes to Orphe Jeans because they have allowed Danny to go back into wedding planning. And Madison tells her that she wants to buy a dress off the rack because she doesn't want to feel like she walking a runway on her wedding day. But yeah, that was Beyond the Gates for today. And we're about to wrap this week up. tomorrow's a short week, but it. Hey guys, let's talk Beyond the Gates for today, May 29th, 2026. Ciao. So down at the Fairmont Crest at Anita and Vernon Dupree's residence, the Grands are in the living room, right? And this time, instead of when Nicole gets her groove back, it's when Anita gets her groove back, or when she tries to. So Gran and Gran are in the living room and they trying to get fresh or whatnot. And they on the couch and child Catherine walk in there and get the shock of her life. Oh baby. So Cat runs up out of there because baby, I did not pay to see that. She goes down to Uptown with Chelsea and she throwing back shots of scotch because she trying to erase that from her memory, because it's one thing to see your parents. Nobody wants to see that, right? But your grandparents, nobody should see that. Ah, child, I'm weak. But yeah, so she is very disturbed by what she has walked in on. And um yeah, so then the Grands reconvene after Cat leaves, and then when they about to get it popping again, in comes Martin. And then Martin get the shock of his life. And Grand like, I'm going upstairs. And he was like, no, you're not, because our grandson was about to leave. The grandson was like, my grandparents taught me how to take a hint, so I'm gonna leave. So Vernon was like, you know what? All these fools keep walking in here. I got something for that. I'm gonna take my baby to the hotel, motel, Holiday Inn, and we're gonna go get it in there. And then he went, and they went to the hotel, and then he went and was like, hold up a minute, and took the do not disturb sign and put that on the door because he don't want to be interrupted. I must stay out of grown folks' business because that don't got nothing to do with me. It was funny though. It was cute. I liked it. But anyway, then we have Vanessa and Martin before he went to the Grands and got the shock of his life. Because then after he went to the Grands and he saw that, then he went down to Uptown because, baby, I needs a drink. And she was like, get him some scotch. He was like, yeah, make it a double. Because, baby, should nobody be seeing their grandparents like that? I felt like I was seeing my grandparents like that, and I didn't need to see that. Like, nobody needed to see that. I'm too young. Young eyes. I don't care if I'm 39. Young eyes. I don't need to see that. But anyway, so he, before he goes to the Grand's house, he was at the country club with Vanessa, and Vanessa was thanking him. I mean, he was thanking Vanessa for, um having Donnell escort Samantha to the cotillion, and she, was like, she was glad to do so. And they were talking about Derek and, how, he uh, impacted so many lives or whatever. So then Vanessa goes down to the casino to go see her mans. Before she gets there, Joey was talking to Bill. Bill got a tremor, y'all. His hand, he got a tremor. So, he was like, I might need your help, because they think that I got something to do. The chief think I got something to do with the plasma ring, and he was like, well, don't you? And he tried to threaten them, and he was like, the threat can go. Bill was like, the threat can go both ways, child. He was like, well, I want to be able to put this in your steady hands whenever they steady again. Joey is a mess. But anyway, so after Bill leaves, Vanessa shows up. She got a bag full of Doug's stuff from his locker at the country club because she never cleaned it out. Doug been dead for almost a year, right? Because it was not. Maybe it's not been that long. How long has it been since Doug died, y'all? I know y'all know. Let me know down in the comments. But anyway, she finally cleaned out his locker and she talks about how she's still grieving Doug. Okay, Vanessa. Gone. Okay, girl. You grieving. Ashley won't even married to Derek, and she grieving harder than you ever did. But I digress. Ain't none of my business there either. Meanwhile, Naomi and Jacob are at home and they're talking about Derek. And like I said, Jacob is experiencing survivor's guilt. And it's heavy on him that his best friend was killed protecting him. And the job is unfinished because they didn't get the impaler, they didn't get the top people. They pretty much got mid-level people. And so the ring will just pick up and go somewhere else with some other people. And, it's not, the job isn't complete. So in a way, it's like Derek has died in vain, because if he would have gotten the impaler and Derek would have died, at least would have been, for something. But because they didn't get the whole ring and the ring can just pick up and move on, it's like Derek died for nothing. So he's feeling a kind of way, which makes sense. I mean, I can't take anything away from him feeling that way because it is quite logical. But meanwhile, in between time, Haley is at the country club, and here comes annoying behind Leslie. Don't Leslie got something to do? She want friends so bad that it's kind of crazy. Because I find myself wondering, is Leslie like truly interested in being friends with Haley because she just wants to have a friend group, or does she have ulterior motives when it comes to Haley and trying to befriend her? But I am glad to say that I think that Haley is smart enough to not um engage with Leslie too much. She's smart enough not to go there. So because she knows that she can't run the risk of someone as volatile and unpredictable as Leslie blowing up her spot. So I don't think she's going, even, no matter how much Leslie tries to force herself on Haley, I don't think that Haley will fall for it. So Bill walks up while Leslie is pestering Haley, and he like, "Hey Satan," and he basically tells her to leave, and she leaves, and um, they start talking about the tremor in his hand, and she's like, "Well, maybe it's stress." And I thought at first that like maybe she was trying to talk him out of getting like trying to get it checked out, but she was trying to talk him into getting checked out, which I don't think makes sense, because we want to keep him away from the doctor so that the medicine can do what it does and he can die. I mean, I don't want Bill to die, but that's what her goal is to kill Bill. So why would you tell him to go to the doctor? Because they might figure out something is wrong with him, and then, you know, but yeah. Haley is talking Bill into going to the doctor to get checked out. I thought she was going to try and tell him that, you working too hard. Let's go to Barbados or wherever she had, St. Bart's, and take a vacation so that she can finish him off over there. But she trying to get him to get checked out. But yeah, that was Beyond the Gates for today. It's pretty tame, pretty cool. But let me know what you guys thought in the comments, and have a great weekend. And I will see y'all on Monday, bright and early, to, well, not bright and early,